Could you shut the door? Thanks, you're the best.
You guys, I can't get that new Beyonce song.
Who loves the world?
Hey, so my name is Shorey. I am currently a master's student. Oh, I am deplorably fame-seeking. I am currently a master's student at the New School for Social Research, focusing in on postmodern studies, so I know what I'm talking about, sort of. I don't have a PhD and I know what I'm talking about, but I'm an MA. And this is Sam Kusek.
I'm the unapologetically nerdy Sam Kusek. We run a blog, an art and theory blog together called Damage into MP, which can be found on Tumblr. We'll have a blog address at the end. This fantastic artwork was done by Lily, who's sitting up in front right there. We just want to give a call out.
Wave your hand, man. Wave your hand.
Wave it in the air. Okay. And today we're going to be presenting on postmodernism and anime. What is SuperFlat? So if you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay, so who here is familiar with Jean Baudrillard, the theorist?
Oh, that's nice.
That's nice. So Jean Baudrillard was a postmodern theorist. He died like 2 years ago, I think. He came up with the idea that because of the advent of late capitalist culture, industrial media technology, we no longer have an access to reality. And this doesn't mean anything in like the magical matrix, we live in the dream of a computer's dream kind of thing. That's not exactly what he's talking about. He's referring very specifically to Plato, the philosopher, the ancient Greek philosopher, and more specifically to Plato's three orders of existence, which posits that there's a real, an apparent, and a copy. The real would be the perfect concept or idea of a thing. The
similar to a god.
So the gods are the real, the things that the gods have are the real, but also concepts and ideas are the real. The apparent, which is like this table right here, it's apparent, I can touch it, it is in this world. And copies, which are any kind of artwork. Art is always considered a copy of the apparent. This is a little demonstration. The real would be the god, so here it's Bastet, which is an ancient Egyptian goddess. The apparent would be the little four-legged creature that walks around and says, meow. The copy would be a drawing of a cat. And now,
speaking of copies, we have everyone's favorite cat, Hello Kitty. So what does this have to do with anime? Well, as popular and cute as Hello Kitty is, she has absolutely nothing to do with the apparent cat.
She's pretty much an abstracted form of a cat or a drawing of a cat. The idea is that she is a copy of a copy for which there is no original, in the sense that we have no access to the idea of the cat anymore, or the concept of cat. There's also a lot of feminist deconstruction centered around Hello Kitty, in the sense that she doesn't have a mouth and that a good woman should keep shut.
She has no voice to speak up for her own rights.
Hello Kitty is a consumer product that doesn't reference anything. She's not from her own anime series. She's just a symbol that symbolizes nothing. She represents a very bizarre logic in which we want things just because they're cute, in which kawaii is a self-justifying mechanism of consumption.
And she's one-dimensional.
She is literally flat. Yes, there are sculptures and stuffed animals of Hello Kitty, but these sculptures are based on extrapolations of a 2D image. This all relates to superflatism, which is a theory by Takashi Murakami and a movement created by the same artist. Some people are calling him the Andy Warhol of Japan. He creates art that simultaneously critiques and celebrates otaku and Japanese culture. When he made the term in about 2002, he was referring to a specific set of artists and art that is usually characterized by hypersexuality, fetishization, infantilization, and abandonment of linear perspective, in the sense that there's no depth of field in superflat paintings, and also in anime there's a lack of a depth of field, and the confusion of fantasy and reality.
Not being able to tell the difference between the two.
This is some examples of Takashi Murakami's art. Some of the more fashion-minded people in the room might know him from the Louis Vuitton bags that have those cute little cherry face smiles. He designed those. He's still currently a resident designer for Louis Vuitton. So if you can see in his little panda bear creature, it has the Louis Vuitton monogram in the ear. And he also does like very hyper-flattened drawings of anime girls. What he's known for, though, rather than just recapitulating anime stereotypes, He creates art that takes these stereotypes, tropes, and symbols and turns them into the grotesque as seen here, in which we have a Mickey Mouse or Hello Kitty-like figure literally vomiting out cuteness. The anime eye, which is, again, a copy of a copy, it's an eye that's so abstracted from an actual eye, it hardly resembles any kind of eye, is duplicated here ad nauseum so as to make the image seem grotesque. Chio Aoshima is another artist that was called SuperFlat when she came out. She takes, most of her settings and paintings are big, like giant landscapes that are usually the size of that wall over there, that take urban industrialized settings and anthropomorphize, big word, them into fetishistic anime women. Here there's a blending of technology and culture, the feminine and the technological. Another example would be Yoshitomo Nara, who takes the trope of the cute little girl and then subverts it by putting them in violent settings. So here's a very stereotypical anime girl, but what damage has been done to her is ambiguous. In the sense that he's trying to portray the sense that something really dangerous and pernicious underlies this kind of kawaii culture that is often overlooked because of the cuteness of the culture.
Most of these drawings are recreations of anime girls that either have a very masochistic face or a very sort of deadpan face here too. There's no cute kawaii girls going like, ah!
The question that came up in my mind when I've been thinking about SuperFlat lately is if all anime can be considered SuperFlat. So I've given the example of Witchblade, Sailor Moon, and Negima, which recapitulate hyper-fetishized stereotypes of women under the guise of often feminist attitudes. It also shows a very bizarre interaction between Eastern and Western cultures that seeks to flatten out and the difference between the cultures. We shouldn't forget that all anime has always been inspired by Western art. In this example, we have Mickey and Astro Boy.
Tezuka was heavily influenced by Walt Disney, and that's really what jettisoned him into doing animation.
And this is, there's a historical factor to this too, in the sense that in post-war American-occupied Japan, the Japanese were imported a lot of Western culture and didn't quite know how to reappropriate it. So we have this, what we now call anime is so heavily influenced by Western art, but in these very strange forms. Again, this is another example of how SuperFlat doesn't necessarily have to be 2D, but SuperFlat sculpture, even 3D video games, are just extrapolations of 2D images that are very far abstracted from actual human forms or linear perspective. A big concept of postmodernism is the idea of hyperreality, which is the idea that fictional experiences feel more real than actual reality, to the extent that something like actual reality can actually be positive. Since there is no real, we conceive copies and simulations as a reality. So the sense that you go and see a movie and you can cry at a movie, but then someone dies in real life and you don't shed a tear, is kind of the ultimate postmodern destiny that I think all of us have been coming into contact with a little bit. This is best captured in a movie like Clockwork Orange, in which the main character states that the colors of the real world only seem really real when viewed on a television screen. So now we're going to go into a few more specific examples of anime that we could definitely consider SuperFlat. The first example would be Paranoia Agent by Satoshi Kon, who was also called a SuperFlatist by Takashi Murakami.
Sure. So I'll just read from the slides. The stress of the protagonist's job causes the character Memoria, a parody of Hello Kitty, to infect her thoughts, becoming more violent and grotesque as the series progresses.
So Moroni, is it Memoria or Moroni?
It's Moroni.
Moroni? Maroni. Well, if you've seen the anime, which I bet a lot of you have, Moroni is this very innocuous figure that all of Japan becomes very quickly obsessed with. She's supposed to be sort of a parody of Hello Kitty in the sense that everyone becomes so increasingly obsessed with her, and yet the image begins to haunt the animator that actually made her, and pretty much destroys her life. So again, there's the sense that there's something very pernicious and dangerous lying underneath kawaii culture.
Speaking of destroying lives, next we're going to talk about Little Slugger and
It's own
Oh,
we messed up.
trying to get a gift award.
Yeah. It'll only do it once, though.
So this relates back to the confusing fantasy and reality that we talked about when Slugger's stuck in the mindset of being in a video game, being on the mission to save a princess, and he's killing these people, believing that they're his enemies, believing that he's leveling up, gaining points.
There's one episode in the anime that very specifically deals with this theme, although I couldn't give you the reference of which episode it was, and I would be impressed if anyone could. No.
All right. Next, we're going to talk about the Persona series of games from Atlas. Yep, they're great games. For those of you that haven't played them, go out and buy them. So this relates back. This relates back to the hyper. We'll take questions at the end. This relates back to the hyper reality slide we were talking about earlier, where life can only be really emulated through external means.
Yeah, that simulation is more real than reality. And that the sense in the game of Persona is that you actually have to access people's unconscious through a television screen, which is, a pretty strange, surrealistic, but also accurate kind of metaphor for the postmodern condition in which understanding people outside of the context of the technologies they are inhabited by is close to impossible. There's also a bizarre leveling up system in which, in all of the Persona games, I think, or at least 3 and 4.
It's more prevalent in 3 and 4.
3 and 4? I haven't played the first 2.
Nor have I.
Should have done more research. In the Persona 3 and 4, at least, you level up by interacting with people, and in the sense that all of our social interactions, no matter how real and connected we feel to people are rendered in this hyper-flattened aesthetic in which you only are friends with people to level up in a video game, and that you actually don't really care much for their personality.
And it's interesting because all of their personalities are categorizable by different values that are designated by tarot cards. So as here you see the Hermit card, and you're interacting with a fox, so you have to find friends of all the major arcana, I believe, and everyone's divisible by that.
Yeah, there's also this strange appropriation of, you guys will probably know this, there's a constant appropriation of Christian and Western images in anime that doesn't quite make sense in the sense that they're very warped by the Shintoist and Eastern perspective. So why does Japanese culture constantly appropriate Western divination imagery to express something that they probably could have expressed better in their own Eastern cultural terms? That's a point of fascination for me, at least.
Yeah, it's very interesting. These games are, they always take place in very stereotypical Japanese settings, the very traditional things you would see in anime and manga with the school experience, the quaint Japanese town, and they're almost, they're just reiterating stereotypes of what classic Japan is rather than the real situation.
And the interesting thing for me was also the marketing of the Persona games in America, maybe not in Europe, probably in Europe, how they wanted to sell the game as a way for American or Western audiences to experience Japanese life, but not actual Japanese life, simulated Japanese life. They're simulating the idea of Japanese life rather than any actual experience of Japanese life. And by doing so, they fetishize any aspects of Eastern culture to a probably dangerous degree.
Yep, what we talked about.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to have to talk about FLCL.
Oh, that got a fist pump. Cheers for FLCL.
Emerson.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.